One. All right. We are live on everything. Hello, everyone who is watching right now. We are here with another episode of Deal Flow Live. We put some more light on good old Ryan over there so you can see him a little bit better. We are here analyzing business listings. So we're looking at businesses that are for sale either by the owner of the business or by a business broker representing the owner. And we're just going to be doing a little bit of a show and tell of our opinions on the matter. So without any further ado, I'm going to hop into something called LoopNet over here. This is a business listing site, and we're going to be focusing on service-based businesses today. This is the area that Ryan and I have really found an interest in and have decided that we like the opportunities that are available here. And we're just going to be talking a little bit about some of the businesses that are listed here. Anything on your mind today about the businesses we're looking at, Ryan?
No, I think it's I think for me it's about kind of the peeling back the curtain on what it takes to operate and run a business and how to assess how much involvement is going to be needed. We have the luxury and the blessing of knowing a lot of different people who have done things in this space of buying and selling businesses, and also working and having people who have worked in these industries. So I think we're going to be giving some knowledge from our personal standpoints, but also from what people who have had family or personal experiences in these industries have told us, that you have to be ready for when you start these. And these shouldn't be non-starters, but just things to be aware of.
Yep. So we're just going to be getting into some of those intricacies based on the businesses that we see. And hopefully, if you're someone who's looking to buy a business like we are, then you can learn a little bit of what it is that we're looking for based on the people that, like Ryan mentioned, the people in our lives that we've been lucky enough to have learned a little bit from. And some of the books that we've been reading, the knowledge that we've been soaking up on the space. And if you're someone who's thinking about selling your business, then hopefully you can get a little peek into the psychology of someone who is trying to buy a business, what it is that they think about. Because these are things that if you understand them well, you can bring these things to your business and understand how to market it correctly, understand what it is that appeals to a buyer, understand what types of things you can do before you sell it to make it worth more. And ultimately, that's going to be better for you. So without further ado, let's get into our first listing. I actually had one picked out that was a little bit different than one we've looked into before.
Okay.
I wanted to start with this engineering company. This is a little bit different than anything we've looked at before. What's your initial thoughts on the numbers here? This is an engineering company for new and remanufactured equipment for sale, and it's at an asking price of $985,000. And it's making cash flow of $430,000 per year. So a little bit more than a 2x multiple, and it's for sale by a broker.
So off the bat, I have a penchant for the manufacturing space, for trades in general. I love those businesses. Engineers, I've known enough of them. They're really fun to work with. And I think most of the time they have the business. Sometimes their ideas aren't heeded. So they have the ideas that are going to move the business forward a lot of times. And, I think sometimes that's what the disconnect between management and engineers. That's where, the business doesn't grow further. So immediately like the industry. I like that we're at under a 3x. Under a 3x is good. We can see kind of what was going into the asking price too. 100K FFE included, 14K of rent, inventory of 80K. So almost 200 or about 200 of that asking price comes in the what they have already, including their rent. So that's nice to know. And you're looking at nearly 50% cash flowing. Now, something to be aware of on the cash flow is that, well, you won't know this until you get a little further in, is always ask when you're doing your due diligence for the SIM, basically the financials for the last, 3 years is standard, 5 years is generous. And you always ask for that. And you want to see if that cash flow is from the year prior, which it usually should be. I think if I was selling a business, I would use my prior year's cash flow or a projection or forecast of the current year. We've seen different people do different methods, and some people like to forecast through their own methodologies. So, they could have maybe they were 100K cash flowing, but this year they're thinking it's 400K. So, always something to be aware of when you're looking into those.
Yeah, where have we seen that one? We won't say who the company is, but we got a sim to look at recently, and they were not necessarily representing their cash flow correctly on the business listing.
And that's something to consider if you're still interested. The considerations were there was a myriad of them, but it boiled down to, well, this is what they think they can. And it quarter one looked good. In their defense, quarter one was looking nice. So I could see if they kept up the momentum, that being the case, but life doesn't behave the way we want it to. So in those situations, it's really important to make sure that the owner is going to stay on for a bit to make sure those metrics are hit or as close to it as possible, because that also shows faith that they know you can hit it and gives you that working period. And if you have to pay them, just pay them if you really love it and you really vibe with them. It's worth the payment to secure that, that knowledge and that education. So
one thing to hit on there is the fact that a lot of times that gives you a little bit of leverage to kind of start revisiting some terms or maybe the asking price. Ryan and I constantly talk about this thing called the law of price and terms that we learned about, which is if they set a certain asking price, then one thing that you can really approach it with as a buyer potentially, or even if you're a seller, one thing to know is that the price and terms simply means if there's a certain asking price for a business, then if they're very firm on that asking price, then that just means you as the buyer can negotiate terms a little bit. If they're not that firm on the asking price, but they're very firm on the terms, meaning are they getting all the cash up front or is some of it financed over time, then you might be able to have some wiggle room with the price. And that's something that you can bring up. Just mention that law of price and terms to tell them, hey, your price, my terms, or vice versa. Another thing to mention is that, that cash flow, you don't pay for future growth potential when you're buying a business. That's just the truth of it. That it's definitely something you should consider and something you should be thinking about. But the way that businesses are valued, and this is especially important for someone who's thinking about selling their business or maybe someone who's a new buyer, you don't value a business based on what it's going to do in the future or what you think it's going to do. You value it based on what it's done in the past, because the best predictor of future performance is past performance. So if someone is marketing their business based on future potential, mostly, you should be wary of that. And it's not necessarily a deal breaker. Ryan mentioned earlier, some of these things are not necessarily deal breakers, but they should cause you to rethink the asking price and the terms a little bit and just approach it a little bit differently.
I agree. I think as we're scrolling down this on the description, they have a lot of the things that you look for, established, which is anything in us. We're considering over 10 years established. Looks like they got that. They told what you specialize in. They have obviously a staff. They're claiming a large order book. And I say claiming not as an insult, just like, you would take them at face value and then you always dig in. A large order book, national accounts of brand names, spare parts division and service. I mean, they have it all built out. Essentially, this is what they're billing as a turnkey business. Now, what we don't see here is anything, at least in that, where the owner is stating their involvement.
So that's something I would want to know more about personally. Is I would want to know, what is the owner currently doing, and is that something that is going to be covered by an employee going forward? So there are, to their credit, there's 6 employees, so that's great. There's a team already. I would want to know more about who the employees are, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, what their role is going to be post-sale, and if they're going to be staying on.
Big thing that you need to always remember when you're looking into businesses is you're buying a business, which is equipment, it is overhead, it is accounts. There are so many pieces of business. Employees are not the business. They are employees. They are team members. They are, in theory, they are coming with it, but they may not stay. They may not vibe with you. They may not want to. So you always want to. That's why we are big on owner and seller, seller owner financing or seller owner staying on as a consultant. Because if they're very attached to that person, we want that faith and we want time to build that trust as well with them. And we also like to look internally to say, okay, who's a good promotional person to fill these gaps that we want to, and then hire into the positions that maybe don't require as much experience. So you really want to show support for the people that you're working with and try to figure out the best way of approaching them with this. Because again, if they don't want to stay, they can just leave. They weren't included in the asking price. That's not how this works.
And at the end of the day, they are adults with their own agenda who can do whatever they want.
Exactly.
So they might have contracts in place that prevent them from going and joining a competing company or something like that. That's something you can dig into and find out.
Not really going to hold much water anymore. The government overturned, I think they did, non-competes. I think in like 2 months or so, non-competes are no longer viable. So they can actually.
That's news to me. That sucks.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
Look, if they want to go start their own thing, they can. There's enough whatevers for everybody, I always say, but you never want somebody to be driven off by you. But if one person's having a bad attitude and wants to go off, they probably going to hurt the culture shift you wanted to do anyway. So they're more than welcome to do their own thing. And if 5 out of 6 stay, love them, develop that culture, take care of them, and really build off of the positivity that you got. We went to a seminar a couple weeks back about the importance of your culture, and if somebody doesn't want to be there, let them go. That's all right. Wish them the best and let them go.
But back to our point is you would want to know those things going in as much as you're able to. You're never going to necessarily be able to know the whole story until you really get in and soak things up. But as much as you can find out going in, and especially if you could have conversations with some of those employees before you actually purchase a business, then you're a lot more likely to kind of control some of that risk that you have, especially if the business is very dependent on some of those employees. Because ultimately, if you're trying to buy it to run it yourself, that's not as big of a deal. But if you're trying to buy it to build it into something bigger and you're trying to stay working on the business and not in it, then that could end up being an issue if you have key employees leaving or if the previous owner was very pivotal in the business.
Yeah, all very good questions. Reasons for selling medical. So that's always something that we obviously say, you look, reasons like that, retirement, medical, or just simply changing of hands isn't going the way. Medical ones, in our experience, you're not really going to have a lot of there's going to be more rigid rules I've found with medical conditions, because number one, the money that they're getting is more than likely going towards medical treatment. And it is an uphill battle. And to try to say, hey, I don't want to give that price, because you're trying to help them, but you're not trying to get a bad deal. So it can be a very big back and forth. You need to be very delicate with it. And on top of that, they may, depending on the condition, seller financing over a long period of time may not exactly be, unfortunately, in the cards. So you really have to kind of come at these with the idea that you're going to have a lot slimmer of a parameter box to work with. But sometimes, things change as the process goes. They get better, things change. But when it comes to medical, they're both, it can be a challenge, I think, with medical. They can be both the best or the most difficult deals to come by. Do you agree, Brody?
I totally agree. It's there's a very emotional aspect that's going on when there's medical issues going on. That's going to cause some urgency in their timeline to sell, just being transparent. And so that could end up allowing you to get your foot in the door, because if you're looking to buy quickly, then you have the same goal as them. But at the same time, like Ryan said, they have expenses they need to cover with a medical issue. And so that's going to be a big priority for them. And that might mean that they need a lot of cash up front. And that's another hurdle for you to navigate. And that means you have to go find that money somewhere. On that note, one thing to talk about with Ryan and I's goals, one thing that is a big focus is any business we're looking to buy, we're looking to leverage some kind of debt service from somewhere, whether that's from the SBA or whether that's from some kind of lender or something like that. Not to say that we're going to give up equity for that, but that is just a much safer bet than risking your own capital with something like this. And in our experience, just with all of the different players that we've met in this space and that have been advising us, that's kind of the go-to method here, is to really leverage other capital other than your own to bring to a deal like this. And so the point I wanted to make there is that leaves you with a lot of options to go find capital in different places where someone might be incentivized to see this business grow and succeed.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, for us, we're doing this in a very specific and methodical way, trying to mitigate our risk. There's always inherent risk, but we're doing everything in our power to creatively find ways to make everybody happy, make everybody whole, and go through these deals. Not to say that you can't just look, if you got it like that, where you're just like, yeah, no, that's a hunt. Like, what were they asking? What was they asking?
They were asking $985.
Yeah, if you go into the SBA, you're like, yeah, I got $200K and I can put that down an SBA loan. I mean, hi, we would love to work with you. But for most of us, that's a very high ask. So,
and you might have that $200K, but you might not want to risk it on like a business that you don't necessarily know that much about yet. So a lot of people prefer not to put their money on the line in that way, just from what I've heard.
Yeah, I think there's definitely many ways to go about it, and this is just shining a light on our particular method of looking at these deals. So we're trying to make it approachable for everyone to look at. But this is a deal where I would say it's the pricing looks good, as long as the employee to owner works. It doesn't look like in this situation you're going to get an owner, you're going to get much owner work out of it, because medical conditions tend to be like, I cannot physically, or I haven't the ability. So you would definitely need to see if you had an operator in that staff already who could step up, unless you already have the experience in this realm, in which case this is a great buy. But as you've highlighted here, firm price, as we said, you're not getting a deal.
Yeah, so that means they're not going to want to come down from this $985 at all. But again, back to the law of price and terms, that's an opportunity for you if they are firm on the price. It's an opportunity for you to say, hey, my personal rule, law of price and terms, your price sounds fine. Let's talk about my terms and what I'd like to propose. I think that it's more than reasonable to propose something like that. Not to say they're going to go for it or say yes. You never know, but it's more than reasonable to bring it to that place. Another thing to consider with a company like this, and this is the case with many businesses that we look at, something like an engineering company is going to require you to hold some kind of specialized license as the owner to be able to run this thing. So, and this is the case with many of my clients that I've worked with that are selling their business, and really many types of specialized businesses like this, especially in the construction space or higher level service space, is they're going to require you to have some kind of license as the owner. And obviously the business owner will be leaving in this case. And so if you're like Ryan and I, we don't have licenses to own an engineering company. So that means you have to have someone in the business that has that license and is going to have that license. And luckily with this one, it looks like that could be possible. They mention in the description that there are experienced engineers on board. So you'd want to know, are one of them going to be staying on long-term as a license holder? And how would that work?
That's also, if you have those licenses, there's a whole line of business where people who have them basically rent out their name and license with them to bring them on. So an income stream if you have those licenses, but you don't want to get involved. You just want people to be able to use you to get these businesses.
Yep. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine just the other day that owns a roofing company, and he actually is able to run that roofing company without having his own license for a roofing company, because he has someone on board to be the license holder and to be available for anything that requires talking to the license holder and to ultimately consult on different aspects of the business. So that's always something that you could go pursue. If you happen to have someone in your network that's willing to do that, that's something that could completely put you into the realm of being able to own a business like this, an engineering business, where you might not be an engineer, you might just be a savvy business person that could bring a different level of business administration to this business. But ultimately, I mean, I really like the look of this deal. I'm glad we saw this one.
Yeah, final thoughts on this. I would say if you have the capabilities and the knowledge, go for it. My asterisk is the staffing. Get to know those guys first. And a deal like this, I would feel totally comfortable asking if any of them wanted to come in on the deal, because engineers are always going to be in demand. There's always going to be a wealth of opportunities. So to keep them happy and around, making them, giving them a voice that maybe they would normally not have, giving them an opportunity to buy in with you makes them part owner, the skin in the game, and has them, sticking around.
And if there's someone who otherwise wouldn't have that opportunity, that could be really valuable to them. And that also could be a source of part of your financing. If you need to come up with a down payment for a business like this, one of the existing staff could be someone who has some money tucked aside, who really believes in the business and wants some ownership in it. And they might be perfectly willing to run it with you and willing to put down part of the money that it takes to buy it from the previous owner. So definitely something to consider there. Now,
very cool.
Going back to our search results, I picked the first one. Ryan, you want to pick the second one?
Yeah, let's scroll down a bit. Let's do something a bit more niche.
Lots of interesting things here. There's quite a lot of variety on this one, which I like. LoopNet is not one we've really gone in depth with.
But man, do we see a lot of the same people, which is good. It means that their broker is doing the right stuff and getting them as many eyes as possible. Let's do something like medical staffing.
You like that one?
Yeah, let's try that one. I don't think we've explored the staffing realm.
I actually just met a friend, Blake, if you happen to be listening, who is going into medical staffing. He's been in the space for a while and is now getting into it deeper. So right off the bat with this one thing I like a lot is that it says seller financing available. So whatever the cost of the business is, that means that they're open to you giving an offer that doesn't include the full purchase price of the business. So that's always very helpful because it allows you more flexibility to be able to buy something that you might not otherwise be able to afford. What are your first kind of couple takes on this whole situation, Ryan?
All right,
this is an expensive company.
We got a 7x revenue. Price to gross is pretty moderate. You're 4.4 to 6.95. I mean, you're doing well. Medical field always going to have high profit, high margins. Established year 2013, we hit our 10-year mark. I think it's going to be. I think they knew going into this it was going to be a seller finance material. It looks to me like they're positioning this to be bought by a large fund, perhaps not an individual buyer, based on how they're kind of pushing this. Which I feel like is a theme. Some of these larger businesses understand that large equity companies are looking to buy in, so they position themselves like this. Not to say you can't, but and they even have documents. I mean, they're very, very thorough. Now, you say 7 employees, and you think, well, who's staffing like that? But this is clearly a contracting service.
This is fun. We usually you can't access the documents directly like this right on the listing, but to give you a quick peek, if you're looking here into what we're looking at, this is basically the type of thing that you get when you're exploring a little bit more on whether you want to buy this business. Now, this is not the full thing. This is what you would call a teaser. And so actually, I don't know if you've seen one of these yet in the search we've been doing, Ryan, but a lot of times they'll have this teaser before you get the sim just to give you like a little preview.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple of these.
You have seen a couple of these. So a lot of times you'll see this teaser before you actually get the name of the company. So it's still not going to give the name, gives some more details though. It gives just a little bit more of a deep picture to look at. And then typically the next step, if you want to get more information, is you sign something like this. You sign a non-disclosure agreement. it's just a fancy document saying I'm not going to go tell everyone what business it is that's for sale, and that kind of holds you to it. And then you fill out, a lot of times, we've seen this a ton of times so far, you fill out these buyer profiles. So it's a profile about you, so that whoever the seller is can see a little bit about you and understand whether or not they want to entertain talking to you more.
Yeah, that's nice to see. Haven't had one of those in a while. At least like without having to sign up and give initial interest in numbers. Retirement owner, fine. 7 professionals capable of handling clients. So it seems it seems like this is a more of an administrative owner relationship, like kind of an overhead, which is pretty good. I mean, in this industry, you're doing a lot of paperwork. You're probably going to have a lot of rules to figure out with staffing and also medical staffing, but this looks great for somebody who wants to get into it. Maybe, I don't know if I would say this is one where I'd be like, I don't know if I would do this as an operator, looking to insert an operator. I feel like I would need to roll this into a larger staffing company, because also in that it said minimal seller financing. So they're wanting you to come they're wanting someone to come pretty well paid and well.
That being said, though, they said available to facilitate bank requirements. So one thing that's interesting about this one is, they're asking a lot of money here. You're not going to be able to get 6.95 million with an SBA loan. The max is 5 million. You'd need to come with some kind of alternative investment if you're looking to go that route.
Coming with almost 2.0 in your pocket, and it doesn't sound, I mean, based on the language, it doesn't sound like they really want to they're not going to hold that line for you. And again, it feels like they're positioning for a large firm purchase, and I
would agree with that.
With that. I mean, there are some businesses that are angling for a private equity purchase or a larger group purchase, and they're not looking for a new individual to buy them. They're looking for a group or something. So that's kind of my take on this one. If you're in a group and specifically staffing industry, this might be a nice one, but I think for the average person like us, this wouldn't work.
I would agree with that. One thing I do like about it, though, just something we haven't talked about a lot today yet, is that it's been established for over 10 years. That's generally Ryan and I's target, is we like to see something that's been established for 10 plus years, just because we know that it's been through some market conditions. It's made it this far. So just a good thing to see there. We also like to see serving a lot of different clients, because one of the biggest issues and riskiest things that you could have going on with a business is that when you go to run it, if you lose a couple of clients and a lot of the revenue comes out with losing those clients, then all of a sudden you don't have the same business. So the fact that they're very diversified in that sense is a really good thing. If you happen to be in a position to buy this one. Also, I happen to know a little bit about this industry, just because, like I mentioned, I have a friend that's in this space. Hospitals are just getting more and more willing to outsource more of the work with the staffing and put that in your hospital bill. I'm not going to put my tinfoil hat on, but because of that, there's a lot of money to be made in this space. So that's probably part of why it's growing fast.
Yes. And also pay the nurses.
Yes, pay the nurses more.
Yeah, that was a good one. I mean, I think that's definitely a nice way to kind of also show that not everything on a business site is designed for the individual. Some of these are designed for groups, and there are group businesses that come on here looking to wrap some stuff up. So not everything's going to be a home run for people who are just looking to get their foot in, but being able to discern that saves you a lot of time.
It does.
Also, I didn't mention that was 10 years. Well, that was the first thing I said.
Oh. Totally glazed over that.
11 years, because they were counting 2013 as year one.
That shows
they
how
added a year on there.
That shows how good of a listener I am.
You're in deal mode, man. You can't. You're like, yeah, I already passed the test.
I'm in wheeler deal mode. Let's look at something different this time. What do we got here?
There's a lot of pool service routes for sale, and it's important to remember that's a route. That's houses. That's a book. I think sometimes people look at those and they go, "Oh man, a pool service netting 1 point, I don't even think they put wait, on this side, I guess you don't get the net until you click in. The margins look great on Pool Roots because it's just a bunch of accounts. And that's not even, we talked with a buddy of yours actually about buying books and how that can kind of get a little hairy. So if you want to maybe talk about that.
That's a really good thing to hit on. This could apply to a few different types of businesses, but specifically service-based businesses, especially if you see a business that, like, if it's closing down or has been closed for any period of time, then if they're just selling the customer list, if they're really just selling the list of customers and there's not established cash flow to it, then the point that he made is that someone could, hypothetically, the owner of that customer list, they could sell it to a bunch of different people. They could water it down and have given it to a few different companies that are all trying to use it and contact those customers. So it's not necessarily worth what it used to make. It's a little bit different, and just something to watch out for.
And we're not saying that this person is doing this. We're just saying that there are people who go around doing that. And just to be safe when you're doing your due diligence, if you're buying just books, just make sure that, try to figure out if they've been on, if that listing's been up for a long time and just has never been taken down.
This is an interesting one. Established Florida concrete company. What do you think of concrete companies?
It's certainly niche, because concrete is not just pouring cement and sidewalks. It's a lot of different types. I happen to know somebody who has been in concrete a long time, specifically construction concrete. And they started their own business a year or two ago, and they're getting some decent traction. They're doing some work. You're going to be doing a lot. You're probably going to be doing more contract work with builders, from my understanding, than maybe residential. I mean, obviously, somebody's driveway, a sidewalk for a town. So your clientele base might be a little more varied. But I mean, concrete's not leaving. We've not found anything better than concrete to do a lot of stuff with. It's fairly cheap. So.
And especially if it's in a developing area, which, I mean, Volusia County, really most places in Florida right now would fit into that category. But if you're in a developing area, then there's going to be a lot of work coming. It's a very established company since 2008, so it's going to have a reputation, which is great. To the point that we were talking about, they make that point here. The government is making a lot of investment in infrastructure projects in that area, so that helps with having work in the future, which we know if you're buying the business, you care about what's going to happen in the future and how that's going to affect the cash flow that comes in. Mm-hmm. Reputation, that's great. We don't like to focus too much on growth potential, although it is nice to see. Experienced team, here's something to talk about a little bit. They're good at ensuring client satisfaction, repeat business. We love to hear that if that's been the focus for a while and that's part of their reputation. That's going to be great.
Half of service is how you treat the clients and how you respond. Not to say that the service isn't important, but I think in any aspect of life, you'll think back and you'll realize that there were some times where maybe you didn't get the best thing or it wasn't the perfect, but they were so nice about it and they did everything they could, or you had a good experience. So it wasn't the worst. It was fun. You would go back because you would give them a second chance at the very least. To me, what's worth the price of admission is the fact that the owner is willing to stay on and make sure the company continues to grow and ensure a smooth transition. That's worth its weight in gold, especially in construction, which if this guy, he started it, those guys probably, he might have hired every single one of those guys. They might have, most of those guys, maybe some of those guys have been there since the beginning. Transitions like that usually are fairly, it's like a bunch of friends and the main friend leaves of the group. And now you're the one who's theoretically replacing the main friend. Those dynamics, those jokes, those interactions are going to be different now. Keeping them on to kind of bring you in, introduce you, give the seal of approval, and also help. I'm not touching that asking price. I'm hoping for terms, because if that's what he wants to do that, great.
And I think we did see up here seller financing available. This is a very high asking price. I'm not going to lie. It's right about a 5 times multiple, which for something doing less than $1 million in cash flow is very high. But that being said, if they're pretty flexible on what that seller financing looks like, then that could be well within the scope of something that's reasonable. If they're willing to finance it for longer than 5 years, for example.
The owner is willing to stay on, which implies that there's still a passion there. The business is something that they legitimately care about.
Did you see this?
Yeah.
I like this a lot. The owner believes with new ownership and expertise, the company can reach new heights.
Now, this is one of these situations where we've talked about owner equity before, offering it, keeping it, not offering it, that kind of back and forth. And one of our main tenets of buying is, do we vibe with the owner? And that sounds kind of dumb and it sounds a little silly, like what it's a numbers game. But if you meet somebody and you feel like there's a connection, you click, you're on the same page, you're doing all the same stuff. There may be the opportunity to do equity as part of the deal to sweeten it if you feel like, okay, we're going to respectably run this business together. We have boundaries, we have clear roles. And that can really do a lot for your purchase price and for, because if they say, hey, 20%, you take 20% off of 2.6, you've taken a decent chunk off of that asking price, and now it's more manageable. And now you have a locked in person helping you grow, because that's a powerful statement right there.
It is. So we like seeing that kind of thing. Again, 9 employees, they've got a pretty established team,
lean,
growing client base,
word of mouth referrals. That's going to be a big theme in these. Is a lot of these businesses, word of mouth, signs, not a lot of online presence. So one of the big things when you're taking over, putting money into the digital footprint.
Yep. If that's something you specialize in, which if you're young and you're tuning into this, Ryan and I are fairly young guys. We grew up on the internet, knowing how to navigate the digital landscape. A lot of these business owners that are kind of riding out on this silver tide, as they call it, of exiting and retiring and just selling their business, are not very well versed in the digital landscape. They don't really know how to use social media. They might not be using it at all for their business. They might not. In a lot of cases, we see they don't even have a website for the business, which is pretty crazy. But they've built a great business despite that.
Because when they built it, it wasn't really that big of a deal and people weren't going there for those things. So as we evolve and as the next generation owns homes, starts to get into positions of power, how they find their people are going to be websites and Google searches. So that's kind of why you're prepping yourself for the next generation of people who are going to be needing these services.
Exactly. So you can really capture a lot of that market share that's coming quickly with something with an established brand like this. Because if there's a company that's been around for 20 years that doesn't have a website, and all of a sudden you bring a website on and you can legitimately say the company's been around for 20 years and it's done all this work, that's a lot of authority that you bring. And you might start taking a lot of the market share from some of the younger players in the game that do have some digital real estate, but just aren't as established, don't have the same team, don't have the same reputation. So there's really a lot of opportunity here.
So yeah, I would say this is something that I'd say concrete. Would you consider concrete niche, or would you say it is general?
I would say it's niche, because I would say within the construction industry, if you're just a generalized construction company, then you kind of do a lot of things. I would say concrete is a niche within there, and you're going to have a little bit of a specialized type of work, which means you might be looked to as an authority within that space if someone needs concrete done. My guess, if I had to take a stab at it, is that they are doing a lot of work as a subcontractor through big construction companies. So I would imagine that there's these big construction companies that are getting a bid with some kind of new project, whether it be commercial or residential, with a builder or something like that, and that this company is a subcontractor for a number of them. And so they probably have a lot of repeat clients that they work with because of that. I would want to ask about that and understand really where those clients are coming from and what type of work it is, because the more that they have clients that are getting access to work like government work and government infrastructure, which they're really touting in the description here, the more that you're going to be secure going forward and for the future, because you're not going to be out there fighting for work. It's just going to be coming to you with government money. And while I don't love the space of being in the position to have to negotiate government bids and try to win them, if you're a subcontractor of someone who's doing that heavy lifting, that can be very lucrative. It's like how they say the only thing better than having a boat is having a friend with a boat. Mm-hmm. The only thing better than having a government contracting agency is having a friend with a government contracting agency that's giving you all your work.
And look, I have known quite a few people growing up whose dads were general contractors and builders. They love that stuff, like the bidding, like it's crazy how passionate they get about it. And like at the end of the day, most of those guys, I say most because not all, most of those guys are buddies, so they'll see each other out and they'll give each other hell for it. But I've always had great interactions working with that crowd and stuff. So just on the people experiences alone, I would say this is one to look at if you have, especially if you got somebody in the space in your family or friends who have done it. Pick their brain. This might be something where you can figure out, how to go about it and do it right. But great business,
I like it a lot. Let's look at another one or two. You see anything down here in the similar listings that you like? I see some interesting stuff down here. We've got a mold analysis and diagnosis firm.
I mean, it's very neat, but there's one that gives us the money down plus the net.
I like that. That's probably a good one to talk about.
That's a big old selling point. Ooh, they filled out everything. We love that.
It's do all round love numbers, to see that.
But honestly, I don't really care.
Why do we get a little bit alarmed by round numbers?
Because round numbers, nothing's ever like this. I think the only business that does round numbers is Chipotle, right? They've managed to do everything so the taxation always comes out to a 0.25 or like 0.5, 0.7, 0.0. But I mean, I
didn't know that. That's a fun fact.
I think it is. I distinctly remember ordering enough Chipotle where it's always come out to a multiple of 0.25, and I've been like, maybe it's just my orders.
Sounds like an OCD person is in charge of the management.
Oh yeah, I was about to say me and them both, because I love that. That's like why I love.
No, I love that too.
That's cool. Okay. Ooh, 1990.
This we absolutely love to see. They've been around for a long time.
We have an EBITDA cash flow. It's identical. Most times they'll do that. They'll just put them both.
I would have some questions about that, about the EBITDA and the cash flow being the same.
Yeah.
Because it's probably not actually the case, unless they're saying that the reason for that is because a lot of times the EBITDA is what's represented on tax statements, but it doesn't necessarily factor in the owner paying themselves or expenses that are kind of run through by the owner that might not be needed for future operations. So a lot of the times it's not actually the same. But that being said, they might have already done an adjustment for the EBITDA here and to make it more reflective of the actual cash flow. So I would just have questions about that.
Yeah, these are things that you note down on your initial run through, because once you get that first sim on information, you'll see very quickly whether or not these numbers are up to date or accurate or not, and it's pretty easy to disqualify or qualify based on that initial sim. It's just like there's nothing glaringly bad about this build out. It's fairly simple and rounded. It looks pretty to do it the way they're doing it. It looks all nice and rounded. So it definitely is more of a marketing tactic. I think you'd agree. But you'll know fairly quickly on their sheet if they're true to form or not.
Yeah, you would want to dig into their financials a little bit. One thing I will say about this one that I would love to talk about here that we haven't necessarily covered before on the show, but has been something that Ryan and I have been talking about the last couple weeks is them being SBA pre-qualified. This is actually a really big deal, because one of the biggest things even with getting SBA funding, as great as it is, you have to have a lender for the SBA financing. You have to have a lender actually helping you navigate that space and get everything locked down there. So I want to dig into what this means a little bit. So when they say it's SBA pre-qualified, that means that they actually have at least one lender picked out that does loans through the SBA that you could actually contact. And a lot of times what it is they'll have a letter that's already signed, like a letter of like pre-qualification that basically says, like, with these following contingencies, this business can get SBA funding. So they might have a couple rules that you have to check off. And I mean, that does a few things for you. One, that gives you a lender that you can, like, you don't have to go search and find an SBA lender. There's one already there that's telling you exactly how much they're willing to give you down for the business. The other thing that's great is that you can see those rules and very quickly see whether this is something you would actually qualify for. There might be a rule in there where you're like, there's no way I could possibly figure that out and actually own this business. And it's better that you know that up front so you can move on to another one.
Yeah, and on top of that, the SBA, as we've said before, is notoriously stringent and strict with their policies and who they will and will not lend to. So it does give a bit of push to the fact that this business is probably being run well. The financials are in order, and the policy, it lends itself to this being a fairly organized business. If the SBA has said we are willing to give money towards this business because we believe it is a functioning and appropriate business.
Now, I would obviously have a question here about the disparity between the title and this description. That I'm a little bit confused on. Actually, you know what? I misread that. No, on the asking price. So that's correct. Right. Okay. I was looking at the net. So basically most SBA loans require 10% down for the asking price. So because the asking price is 2.2 million, they need 220,000 of that down. So that's about, let's do a quick number run here.
I'm reading this one. It's already.
So that has us at about, if the cash flow is correct, which we did mention we had some questions about since it matched the EBITDA, but if the cash flow is correct, this is at a 3.5 multiple. So it's a little higher than we like to see.
A little above average.
Nothing insane. No. We do prefer below 3, but for something with cash flow above $500,000, that's not alarming to see by any means. And especially if it's had good growth and it's a very solid 625,000. And the fact that it's SBA financed, right? If we think about that for a second, taking out the 220,000 that you're going to have to come up with, that you're going to have to go and find. Typically SBA financing is done over about 10 years. So if you got to come up with the 200 or the 2.2 million. So if you take out the 220,000 purchase price, that leaves you with 1.98 million that you have to come up with, or that you're going to have to pay out for the SBA financing. So what that's going to actually look like is that's going to be over 10 years, and that's going to be monthly installments. So divided by 12. So you're going to be paying about $16,500 per month. But if that cash flow is really true to what it's saying, remember that 16.5 number, if it's making $625,000 in cash flow per year, then it's going to be making about $52,000 in cash flow. And this is profit, by the way, cash flow. It's going to be making about $52,000 in cash flow per month. And so after you pay off that 16.5,
which that doesn't account for an interest rate of between 8 and 11%.
Right. So let's for sake of round numbers and being conservative, let's round it up. Let's say 20,000 per month is what you're going to have to come up with.
You say 20K. I mean,
so that leaves you with 52 minus 20. That leaves you with about $32,000 in profit per month. So if you're looking to make $10,000 a month, for example, as the owner of this business, you're going to make that and still have about $20,000 left over after paying your debt to go and maybe reinvest into some technology or some systems, some ads, some things that are experimental that could grow the business that are not proven. So we like to see something like this where there's that flexibility. Now, let's think about a different example, and let's imagine that we had to go get some lending for that $220,000 that we had to come up with. And let's imagine that we wanted to, because I talked to someone today that told me their standard is to really give a lender a really good deal, so that they can feel good about the return that they're making on their money. And that's the way that they get these deals funded a lot easier. So they actually like to give them about 12% on their money. So imagine you had to go get that $220,000 from a private lender of some kind, and you had to come up with that. Imagine you wanted to pay them back over 2 years, for example. So $220,000 divided by 2 divided by 12 and times that interest rate of 12, that's going to leave you with an additional 10, let's round it up to $10,500 a month to pay. Remember though that your profit was $52,000. So if you've got to pay that $10,500 and that we rounded up to 20, leaves you with about $30,000 to pay. So ultimately you're still probably going to be profiting about $20,000. And if you were able to negotiate that, you didn't have to come up with any of your own money. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. I think you have to remember that if you are coming into this deal and you're not putting any of your own skin in the game, figuring out your like bare minimum, and I say bare minimum, and again, nothing we're saying that not financial advice. We're just gonna put that one out there. But like, if you look at your expenses, you say, what do I need to pay rent, to make a savings bubble, to put away some, and to cover my bills. You should try to make that as good as possible, so that, like, look, if it's only $7,000, it's like, great, I can make up to $10,000, and then that $10,000 that you have left over, that's what goes into your business. Because even though you're paying off your debts and there's $22,000 theoretically sitting on the table, you always, especially in those formative years, want to keep reinvesting in your business and making it more self-sufficient, improving it, and making it a place where people want to keep coming back to work.
To your point of you always want to be reinvesting, another rule that a friend of mine who's done a lot of these types of acquisitions, he's done over 10 of them in the last couple of years. So he's seen this a lot of times and had to go through it himself. Another rule that he gives is he will give himself a fixed salary so that he knows that he's not taking more than a certain amount per year. And then with that remaining amount, he's actually able to know and plan for the amount that he's going to reinvest into the business. So that's a way that if you're coming into a situation like this and you've never made anywhere close to $10,000-$20,000 a month in profit, and all of a sudden you're going to be in a situation where you are making that and you could take it for yourself if you want to. If you want to set up some controls for yourself, you might want to go ahead and decide that you're going to fix yourself to a salary that covers yourself pretty well and also gives you a little bit of room to spend on things you like to do, so that the rest is going back into the business. And what my friend does, he said, is he'll fix his salary, but he also he gives himself structured raises every year too. So he knows that he's going to make a certain amount more each year than he did last year for himself personally, but most of that money is still going back into the business and able to really fuel that growth.
It's very important to plan the financials out. And obviously, your goal is always to make more money, to be more successful. So, you will be able to make more if you do the right things and you have the right stuff in place. So don't think that what you're buying at is where you're staying at. So if you have all the stuff in place and you're doing the right things, you will theoretically be making more per month as you do it.
So we're at the 7:00 hour here. Let's look a little bit more at this one. Okay. 21 employees.
Hang on. Business description, just going to point out one thing. Master electrician may stay on for up to 2 years. Knowing very little of what I know about the trades and specifically electricians, that makes me scared as a non-electrician that the master, if there's only one master electrician, which there normally in a small company, probably only one, if he's on his way out theoretically, or he just says I'm out, which he can, now you're wondering, do you have just journeyman? Do you have what level of electrician do you have? And some of that money you're going to want to put back into their education, and making sure that the talent essentially stays on, because unless you are an electrician, you are not going out there to touch that stuff. So I would probably be networking a lot, or trying to get a very good pulse on what the level of trade skill is in that business beyond the master electrician, because he's a master electrician for a reason and he's got veteranship. So that's to me, that's where my red flag is.
I would agree with that. I would be a little alarmed by that as well. If I was seriously considering buying this business, I would not close on this business if I did not get a chance to talk to that master electrician. And I think what my approach would be is I would ask them, hey, Mr. Master Electrician, I know you're on the fence about staying on with new ownership. Could you just tell me a little bit about your long-term goals? What is it that you're hoping to achieve in your career in the next 5-10 years or so? And if I was the owner of this business, is that something you feel comfortable in me helping you achieve? And what would that look like? And they might just fuck around and give you the exact roadmap of what it would take to keep them on. So you never know. I would just want to ask them though, and kind of get a feel for that person and whether I thought they had any other plans.
Yeah, that's a very key piece of this business, and that is in my opinion, that's a deal breaker for me if they're not going to stay on, and if they don't even have a referral for me of like their buddy or where to find them at, like a specialized business like this, you cannot mess around. Not to say journeyman and apprentices, are apprentices. Not to say a journeyman couldn't do a good job, but that's like the top of the food chain. So losing that can be pretty detrimental to your forward progress.
Yeah, if it was me and that person was leaving, if we knew that they were going to leave, but if the owner was staying on for a little while to help, then you might even consider writing into the agreement that part of the closing price or the cash or the final deal is contingent on that position being replaced by the previous owner.
Oh my God. Support and training. Sorry, there's a lot. Support and training. Oh, buddy. 3 months no pay? Okay, well, I think that's boy, that red flag and that green flag are now about the same size.
So yeah, this is very helpful. The seller is willing to ensure that things go smoothly,
and he would
and they're always going to say that, but
they would like to remain part-time
in the business after the 3 months. So it sounds like they're willing to semi-retire. So this is something where
it's a family business too, which means that there's a name in this. So at that point, now that kind of, in my mind personally, that almost net zeros the master electrician thing. Because
I would agree, because the owner is probably even more of a master electrician,
or they just know where to find people who are of that level or close to that caliber of electrician.
And again, if they're willing to ensure a smooth transition, if they really are, then I think they're not going to freak out if you want to write into the deal that if the master electrician does leave, then they're responsible for replacing them. And if they do have a big problem with that, then there might be another thing to consider. So that's something I would probably try to write into that deal. I like that it looks like the seller owns the office space and leases it to the business.
We hate dealing with real estate anyways.
Yeah, we usually don't want to buy real estate as part of the business. And I like that they're willing to continue leasing the office space for at least the first year. I would honestly want to know if they're going to continue for the second year. It looks like for the second year, they want to raise the lease price, which, $500 extra when you're netting $52,000 a month, not a deal breaker for me.
No, that goes $1,200 first, $1,900 second, $2,400 third. That's fine.
And they're basing it on current market rates in their area, so it's all very above board and legitimate. Yeah, I like this a lot. This is a solid business. This is one I would like to pursue.
Yeah, this is
the lease doesn't expire until 2029. So it looks like the while the price will be raised, the lease is pretty solid and is going to be around for a while. So you're not going to have to worry about relocating.
And props to the seller who owns the land. Is that a comment on the phone, or is that like, well, I don't know what that little like?
That is someone that wants to join the live as a guest.
I don't know. Remember that?
I don't know. Those get weird.
Yeah,
they're trying to like battle you and stuff. So
yeah,
sorry, we're probably not going to invite you. I doubt you're going to come and talk about business listings. Just being
if you
honest.
are, you can go on LinkedIn and like message on the LinkedIn one.
Yep.
Then we can invite you, or at least have you on next episode. Yeah. So I like this, and the fact that they did like when you have family businesses coming. I mean, we both know. You know, sometimes neither of our families had this thing, but like you own land, you own businesses. Sometimes you the person who starts it says, well, I own the land and the business on top of it. I don't need a lease. I don't need any documents. I own everything. And then as that progresses to new hands and then ends up in a situation like this where they're just selling, having a physical lease, even though they own both of it clearly, a lease is nice. It's safe. It's contractual. You are protected. They are protected. It just makes everything easier. You're not just Venmoing a theoretical stranger, a couple grand every month.
It shows that they're organized, and this is something that I've seen pretty commonplace in businesses that are doing north of $1 million in cash flow per year, and this one's not even doing that much, and so very organized for the size that they are. I like to see that because it shows that they know how to structure the business as its own separate entity. You're going to be dealing with someone that's at least fairly educated and smart here. Oh, looks like I gotta verify.
Yep, we're not robots. Yeah, again, as we always say, great job to everyone. If your business was featured on here, great job to you. Everything looked good. Our preferences are just our own. It's just how comfortable we feel with these. But everybody seems to be doing well on their stuff. But our pick of the stream, what would you say is of the ones we reviewed? What is your pick?
I'm going to say this last one is my pick. Okay. I really like this one. We have been honing in on home services specifically with our search. We believe in, if you're someone who's tuning in who is thinking of buying a business, our personal search has led us to really hone in on looking at home services as a really strong area. With it comes many different types of industries, but the reason that we're thinking that is because home services are always going to be around. There's always going to need to be electrical work that's going to need to be done, unless everything goes wireless all of a sudden. I think wires are here to stay for a while, and electrical circuitry, I think only more work is going to need to be done there. We also like home services because it's just in demand regularly. I mean, the population in Florida here is growing rapidly and developing. And it's just a very solid type of business that is always going to be needed. Why else do we like them?
We love family businesses because, we come from that background. We understand that passion, that emotion, and we know the need to make it successful. And that is, whenever we're doing something like this, our goal is not just to buy one business. We are looking to expand and basically make a bigger footprint of the business that we're acquiring, which is why we don't just exclusively work on new business deals. We're always looking for people who want to do work with us on expanding their existing business. Maybe they don't want to sell it. Maybe they just want to expand it to a degree or to do some expansion, and they don't either have the time, the desire, or the capabilities of doing that. So we have talked with people, done a number of consultations with people who want to do expansion work, just increase their footprint, do something like this. They have the cash but not the time or anything else, and they want to do it. So whether it's buying something that is being given to us essentially through the purchase, or working with somebody in a deal where we are expanding it on their behalf and just basically running the information by them and getting the approval to go with the deals, it's what we love. We love increasing, giving second lives to, because in that transaction, their business grows, somebody else gets to get out of their business and gets to go on with their life and do what they want. So that's kind of how we operate in this. That's why we like it. And I'm going to agree with you on this one. The concrete had me, like, I was there.
Me too.
It was concrete. It was beautiful. And then you hit me with the family business and the owner
staying
on part-time.
That was
nuts.
That was the seller for me too. Is that they really, you could tell they
That's
really
awesome.
only want to semi-retire. They must really love this business. They've been doing it since freaking 1990 for God's sakes. So I loved that part. I love how long it's been around. I love that they want to stay on part-time at least. I would feel really good about this one. And in fact, maybe we'll hit them up.
Look, maybe we'll hit them up. And hey, like if you saw anything you like on here, hit these people up, talk to them.
I don't want anyone to contact Eddie before I do.
No,
I'm going to cover him up.
All is fair in the game, guys. But I think that's been a great episode for us. Anything else, Brody?
Yeah, no, this has been an awesome episode. We're going to continue to do these every Tuesday night, and we'll be going over business listings. We're going to hop around to different sites like we have been so that you can get a clear picture of how to navigate the space with public business listings. One thing we might check out next time or in one of the coming ones is a Facebook group that we look at a lot. It's a little bit different way of looking at businesses, a little bit less organized, but also a little bit more of a Wild West, and there are its own sets of benefits with that. So look forward to that one in one of the coming weeks. And other than that, if you're someone who's trying to buy a business, welcome. If you're someone who's trying to sell a business, welcome. I hope you learned something. I hope that you're getting some value out of sharing in this experience with us. We sure love learning this stuff and getting deeper into the space. And it's been quite a journey already, and it's going to be quite a journey going forward. So we hope that you stick around with us and join us every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Hey, Brody, where can they find you? And I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Ryan Santo on LinkedIn.
Yep.
But if you're looking for Brody, he's got a couple different places where you can hit him up if you wanna get information, or even if you want to be on the show.
Anywhere that you're watching me right now is somewhere I can be found regularly. So TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. There might have been another one I forgot to mention there, but Instagram and LinkedIn are the best places to message me. Check my messages regularly there. So if you message me on Instagram or LinkedIn, usually you can get a response from me. Ask me anything, whether you're a buyer or a seller. I can probably get you connected to the right people that you need for different things. Just as I've been putting myself out there in this space, the people kind of present themselves. And so I'd be happy to help out or answer any questions that I'm capable of answering. And Ryan has become very well versed in the space as well. And he's a LinkedIn guy. So find him on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And if you want to work with us, you want to have us discuss, you want to work with us on something, you want to have us do a topic on the episode, you want to maybe be on an episode, hit us up, ask us, talk to us. We're very open. We love I think it was I think your better half said at one point that she hears my voice like often through your place, just like as you're hearing my voice memo. So this is all we talk about for the most part. So we love talking, we love chatting. So please
hit our line, give us some stuff to talk about. We love it. And we will see you next time on Deal Flow Live.